Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books and I'll let you know what I thought about them. And we always start with a pick of the week, and this week's pick of the week, Absolute Wonder Woman, issue number 2 from DC Comics. Y'all, I am all freaking in. I am all in on what DC is doing right now with their entire all-in initiative. I'm down for the Absolute books. I'm down for Absolute Wonder Woman. This book is absolutely freaking phenomenal. I loved issue number 1. It made the pick of the week. Issue number 2 continues the momentum that was established. Now, one of the criticisms I heard of Absolute Wonder Woman number 1 was that it didn't give us enough of the story. Right? I would disagree with that. I think it gave us a really good start at a current situation with these invading demonic forces. Diana's there to stop them, and we get background information about this iteration, this version, this variant, if you will, of Diana Prince in this Absolute DC universe, right? In issue number 2, we continue that modern day threat, the present day threat. We move that momentum forward. We actually explain a little bit more about what's going on there. And then we dive deeper into the backstory of this Absolute Wonder Woman. In fact, we start diving into the idea of Absolute Steve Trevor. I love this book. I think it's amazing. I think the story's really good. It's very engaging. It is a very unique and different take on Diana, on Wonder Woman, but it still feels at the core rooted in that character. And then you got Hayden Sherman on the artwork. Y'all, it just does not get better than Hayden Sherman. They are one of the absolutely most prolific comic book artists out there. They are always able to adapt and shift and change their styles to appropriate whatever tone needs to be appropriated for whatever story is going on. And Hayden's sense of composition, panel design, layout, balance on a page, it's all freaking phenomenal. The art is amazing, the story's really cool, it's something new and fresh, yet it's different, rooted and grounded and familiar at the same time, but very different. It's a really interesting take on Diana, aka Wonder Woman. Amazing artwork. Kelly Thompson, the writer's doing a great job. It makes the pick of the week. And I got to give a special mention to Absolute Wonder Woman Noir Edition, issue number 1. This is a reprint of issue number 1. There is also a second printing of issue number 1, but this is a reprint of issue number 1 with just the line work, just the black and white line work. And it is freaking phenomenal to look at. I love that DC's been doing these Absolute editions. What's crazy is that they do look cleaned up. They don't look like they're pulled straight from original art. It feels like they're pulled they're from the original art, right? But it doesn't feel like an artist edition or something like that. I would appreciate it more if they would do that. But one interesting thing is that even the freaking ads are in black and white, so that's a way to commit to the bit, DC. Absolute Wonder Woman Noir Edition number 1 is out this week. Then we got Justice League Unlimited issue number 1. Y'all, I am all in right now on what DC is doing. Seriously, like, they have had a plan for years. But let's just go back to, like, Dark Crisis, right? The post-Dark Crisis dawn of the DCU. All of that it felt like there was a plan to lead us to a certain spot. And that spot has been All In and the launch of Justice League Unlimited, right? This is not necessarily based on the cartoon of the same name, but it is kind of the same concept in a way. The Justice League realizes that they have to reform. They've been gone for a while since Dark Crisis, right? They have to reform, and they got to get bigger and better than ever. So pretty much any superhero is now available to be part of the Justice League's roster. It's a big scale, it's an epic scope, and Mark Waid, the writer, does a great job of setting that up, getting us introduced into it. Even if you haven't been following DC for the last few years, even if you haven't read DC All In, the one-shot special or anything like that, you can jump right in here and enjoy just great, epic, scaled superhero comics, written by Mark Waid, who knows what he's doing, but also the art is by Dan frickin' Mora. The art in the book is amazing. When moments need to be big, they're huge. When moments need to be a little bit more subtle and soft, they are. But in this book, it's mostly balls to the wall. It's got some really great moments, some really great revelations towards the end that really hook you in and want to have you read more of this book. This is like the 4th time I've read it, and I'm sold. 4 times reading this book, and it's awesome, it's dope, it's amazing. And it's a runner-up for your pick of the week. All right, also from DC, we got Black Canary, Best of the Best, issue number 1. First part of a new 6-issue series by Tom King and Ryan Sook. Ryan Sook's artwork is really good, really solid. The story, it's less than all right, y'all. It's Tom King doing what I don't like about Tom King. Sometimes the books feel like a basic concept and gets really bloated out with unnecessary verbosity. That's what's happening here. This book is extremely wordy, and in fact, so here's the whole premise. Black Canary versus Lady Shiva in a fight. Like an actual, an actual fight, like in the ring fight, right? So that's going on. So all of the issue is narrated by the commentators of the fight. You do get some nice kind of work done with the character of Dinah, of Black Canary, with her relationship to her mother and things like that. You get some nice tidbits here and there, but it all gets bogged down by this overly verbose narration from the fight commentators, and then when it gets to the fight, you lose all of the momentum of the book, and I feel like it's just kind of stiff and stunted. I just didn't like this one. Did not work for me, and it was like the only DC book that really didn't work for me. Then we got Batman Santa Claus, Silent Night Returns, issue number 1. Jeff Parker is back, teaming up Batman, the DC Universe, and Santa Claus. They did this last year with Batman Santa Claus Silent Night. That was a fun, heart-filled, charming book, right? That I really enjoyed, and I think it makes a great like holiday superhero comic book read, right? And the trade paperback for that is out this week, by the way. But this is the sequel. It's a different artist. The artist is still pretty solid, and the story is right along those same vibes. It's charming, it's got heart, it's interesting, it's plugged into the DC universe, but it's also kind of its own thing. I really like this book. It sets up a new threat, a new villain that only Santa Claus can come and help the Justice League and the heroes of the DC Universe out with. But if you like the original, no reason why you're not going to like that one. Then we got Detective Comics 10,091. My bad. 1,091. 10,091? That's crazy as hell. What year is it? Anyway, I bet there's a new Jumanji movie out. Anyway, so Detective Comics 1,091. Tom Taylor is doing a really great job of coming off of a very awesome run by Rom V, in my opinion, and basically plugging this directly into the current of DC Comics and DC All In and all that jazz. And at the same time, playing with the mythology of Batman, but in a way that's not obnoxious or annoying or disrespectful, but very respectful and very engaging and very cool, right? So I really like the story and the mystery that's being set up here. But Mikel Hanin, this is the best artwork I've ever seen from this guy. It is amazing. He is drawing, he's illustrating, coloring, everything is done by his own hand, and it is freaking stunning. The color choices are bold and amazing and dynamic. The action sequences flow with movement and pace and excitement and energy. And it's just freaking awesome. This is one of the best illustrated Batman books I've seen in a long time. And we've had the likes of Dan Mora and Jorge Jimenez on Batman books. Even in some of the more dull scenes visually, it still pops. It's great. It's the best artwork I've ever seen from Mikel Hanin. Detective Comics slays. That's an awesome issue. Superman number 20 is here, and it might be Josh Williamson's best issue of Superman yet. It just gets better and better, let me tell you. Plus, we got Dan Mora on the artwork. I've been begging for DC to put Dan Mora on the flagship books. Let's put him on Superman. Let's put him on Justice League. And this week, we get our wishes. Exciting dynamic, kinetically charged artwork, and a really cool story that has a really interesting take on Doomsday. Doomsday is back, but he's back in a different version than we've ever seen him in. And Josh Williamson knows his history, he knows this character, he knows the reader, he knows our expectations, and he delivers. And Dan Mora teaming up with Josh Williamson on a Superman book. Let this never end. I've been hearing rumors out there, DC. I just want to say this. I don't put any faith in rumors. I take them with a grain of salt. But Dan Mora and Josh Williamson on Superman, don't let this go. Is that important? Then we get Action Comics 1077, not 10,077, but 1077. Another solid issue of Mark Waid's Action Comics. Yeah, the book is weekly. Do I think it should be weekly? No. Why? Because it kills the sales of the book. Because it's a $5 investment weekly in the midst of a lot of competition. A lot of competition from DC. Even, I dare say, a lot of competition from Superman. That being said, it's a good book. It's really good. And if this was not weekly, I would probably say the story's been going on too long. It's time to wrap it up. But giving it to us at this pace has really helped me engage with the story. Superman in the Phantom Zone, flung back into the past of Krypton, back into the Phantom Zone. It's all acting weird and wild. Some interesting stuff being done with Mon-El. The backup story with Supergirl, it's all right. It's coming a little bit more in focus, and that's fine. The book shouldn't be weekly, because it is killing the sales. So, commercially, the book should not be weekly. But, critically speaking, I'm glad this book is weekly, because we're getting through the story. I mean, this is part 8, and it's not over yet. Not that I don't like decompressed stories, and this story is awesome, but do y'all get what I'm saying? I will tell you this, from my experience, every time Action goes weekly, sales decline. From my experience, and right now, Action Comics 8 issues into a weekly run, my sales are weak on this book. Maybe I need to try to push it more. Who knows? Then we got Nightwing here with 10,020. No, it's just 120. Dan Waters, Dexter Soy. This is their second issue on the book. The first issue I liked, but I didn't feel like writer Dan Waters was comfortable enough with this book, with this assignment on Nightwing. It's a little bit different than we're typically used from his style. It may not seem so poetic. It may not seem so literary. It may not seem like there's a lot of deep, rich, complex layers to dive into the character Dick Grayson. Seems more like a run-of-the-mill superhero thing. Maybe that's not Dan Waters' thing. But it is, and he's finding his footing here in the second issue. First of all, Dexter Soy does a great job with the artwork, but really, Dan Waters is coming into his own on this book, finding his place, being able to bring his style along with the style of a Dick Grayson comic, right? So I'm really liking it. I love the ending. I love the setup for this new villain. That's very Dan Waters. Super cool stuff, and I'm excited to see this book blossom and develop further. Then we got Green Arrow, issue number 18. This is the first official full-on issue from Chris Condon, the writer of That Texas Blood. A lot of people fans of that book. I kind of dropped out of it, but I need to get caught up. Eric, I'm thinking about you. But Green Arrow number 18, it was a good, solid issue. It was really good. Like, I love the deliberate and measured pace in this book. There's a lot of silent sequences, a lot of letting the art just breathe and have the impact that it needs to have. The artist here is Montos. Just Montos. Yeah, no first name, no last name. It's just Montos. It was a solid book, setting up a really interesting run for Green Arrow. Even if you haven't been privy to the Josh Williamson stuff and you're trying to jump in, or even if you're just a Chris Condon fan, check it out. It's actually a pretty solid book, and it feels like some of the best Green Arrow runs we've gotten. Josh Williamson, Kevin Smith, Mike Grell, Chuck Dixon. This feels, I know it's very early, but it feels like this at least understands that it's standing on the shoulders of those Green Arrow giants. It feels like it's being very respectful of it. Then we got Batman The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, issue number 3. An amazing cover. Tim Sale gone way too early, but they've repurposed some of his unused art and made great covers for this series. We got Mark Chiarello on the art here. and I love it. This feels more in the vein and in the spirit of what Tim Sale would have done with this book. Now, of course, this is Jeff Loeb. Tim Sale is gone, unfortunately, and he wasn't here to do this book, right? But this is a continuation of the Long Halloween story, Dark Victory. This is the third part of that trilogy, not counting Catwoman When in Rome, though Catwoman When in Rome is pretty freaking dope. And this is a really dope mystery. There's a copycat holiday killer out there. Somebody has kidnapped Gordon's son. Batman's trying to figure that out. It goes month to month. It keeps that same structure, keeps that same format, and it's utilizing a different artist in each single issue. This time, Mark Chiarello, and the art is freaking great, and I feel very much in the flow, vein, and spirit of what Tim Sale would have done with this project. So that's super cool. Let's jump over to Marvel. We got a new West Coast Avengers issue number 1. Jerry Duggan is the writer. The artist is Danny Kim. Art's all right. The art is a little wonky, clunky. Are those the right words? It's all right. It's Iron Man Tony Stark trying to start a new team in Los Angeles. They're going to be the West Coast Avengers. He's got Rhodey there. There's a reprogrammed or a revitalized, trying to be a good guy Ultron. Spider-Woman's involved. Some dude named the Blue Vault, I think. They're getting Firestar involved. Tony's back in his Silver Centurion armor. There's so many bits about this book that should work, but it just doesn't work for me. It plays itself too goofy, too silly. It's not taking itself very seriously, but at the same time, it's not a serious book. And that's kind of a problem. I love books that don't take themselves seriously, but at the same time, approach comics as a serious medium. I feel like this one just doesn't do it. I just feel like it doesn't get the assignment. Didn't work for me. I was disappointed. I thought it was lackluster. I thought the art was clunky. I thought it was a little bit too silly. Then we got Amazing Spider-Man issue number 62, the second part of the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man. Doctor Doom is now the Sorcerer Supreme of the Marvel Universe, right? And he has decided that, so every year, Stephen Strange, when he was Sorcerer Supreme, had to like participate in this big tournament where all these champions of Satoric come, and he's got to fight them off, but he dies a lot because he's able to like give himself like a certain amount of new lives or something like that. So he dies, but he can come back, but he actually experiences that death very viscerally. And Doom now is the Sorcerer Supreme, and he's like, you know what? That shit's beneath me. Spider-Man, I'm going to pick you. I'll give you some magic powers and a new coat of armor. And there you go. The first issue was actually really good. Joe Kelly, Ed McGuinness, I mean, they're a great team. They know what they're doing. They've been doing comics for a while. First issue was great. Second issue, not so great. It didn't really dive into the horrific nature of what's going on to Spider-Man. Like, it plays with it, but it doesn't really super dive into it. And a lot of the stuff just felt like fluff. And it didn't really work for me. I really liked the first part of this story, but the second part waned a little bit on my engagement. We'll say that. Not as much as Iron Man number 2, though. This was the worst Marvel book I read this week. And this was bad. I just didn't like this. Spencer Ackerman is the writer. I don't know who he is. Julius Ota is the artist. I don't know who he is. I did not like this book. I did not like issue number 1. I almost did not want to read issue number 2, but I decided to do it. And I regret it. I hated this book. I hated every moment of reading it. It was dull. It was boring. The story's got some potential. Like, Tony Stark is losing control of Stark International, or Stark whatever it's called now. Stark Unlimited, whatever the hell it's called. Yeah, we've never seen that story. But anyway, that's happening again. He almost dies. He's in the hospital for months. He comes back. He's super thin, lanky, malnourished. He's built a new coat of armor that hopefully is impervious to magic because it's like steampunk or something. I don't know. I'm done. I'm not reading anymore. I don't like it. Then we got Uncanny X-Men issue number 6. This has been one of my favorite X-Men books since the post-Krakoa era. Gail Simone's been doing a great job. David Marquez's artwork is amazing. David Marquez is not here. So we finished the first arc. This is kind of like a standalone issue, but it's also starting like the next arc, I guess. There's a different artist here. It's Javier Garron, and it's fine. It's better than I would do on a comic book, but there are moments where it just kind of feels cluttered, not sophisticated enough. Like, it doesn't feel like it's elevated enough. It's all right, but it is a little bit clunky. The story is still fine, and I think that Gail Simone has got a good handle on this X team, and this is a solid X team. Rogue, Gambit, Jubilee, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and a bunch of new kids that are interesting. It's their first day at their new school. We're focused in on that. We get a revelation about Wolverine dealing with the mental health issues. Like, no shit. That seemed heavy-handed and kind of out of place. There was some clunky moments in the script on this one, actually. This might be the weakest issue of Uncanny X-Men so far. But I still thought it was all right. Then we got Mystique issue number 2 from Declan Shalvey. This was way better than issue number 1, and I liked issue number 1. But it's Declan Shalvey giving us a Mystique story that's also very much a spy story. Declan Shalvey has always been really great at action sequences. He is able to now play in the X-Men universe, and because he's writing Mystique, he gets to have Mystique be any character he wants to draw, right? Including Nightcrawler or the Blob, right? Great art, great sense of action, pace, and energy, and a really cool story that's coming more into focus. Issue number 1 was all right, but story-wise, it felt a little bit muddy. And issue number 2, it feels very much in focus and clarified. And I thought issue 2 was way better than issue number 1. Blade number 2, though, this is Blade Red Band, so it's a bagged edition. Why is it Red Band? I don't frickin' know. There's nothing in here I don't think you would see in a typical Deadpool comic or anything like that. It's all right. Brian Hill writes a hell of a Blade. Eric is safe in his hands, but you broke up the run. You had Blood Hunt. We're dealing with the ramifications of that. This is just a 5-part series. This is issue number 2. What's going on? We introduced some new content. I mean, it's a good book. But Marvel, you're mishandling Blade so freaking much. You got a great writer on this. Brian Edward Hill. He's killing it. Let him work. Let him cook. So I guess my only complaint about Blade is that I think it sucks what Marvel's doing with Blade right now. Brian Hill's also doing a great job with Ultimate Black Panther, issue number 10. This was a pretty solid issue. T'Challa's still dealing with some dreams. And then we got a new player introduced into the scene, and it's really interesting and very cool. A lot of people saying this book is a slow burn, and a lot of people are dropping out of this book. But I like it. I think it's got a nice, steady flow to it. It's a very intentional book, and it's very cleverly structured and paced. And I think Brian Edward Hill is great at dialogue. So Marvel's letting him cook here, but they ain't letting him cook here. Marvel, if anybody's listening, let Brian cook on these books. Let him have 5 years on Blade solid. We don't need all these reboots. We don't need the interruptions. But what we need to do is jump over to Image Comics. And from Image, we have Hornsby and Halo issue number 1. It's a new one from Ghost Machine, written by Peter J. Tomasi with artwork by Peter Snijberg. PDS. It's got artwork from PDS, and it's written by Peter J. Tomasi. It was a pretty fun book. So this is part of the Family Odysseys. Rockefellers came out last week, and it was kind of like a family-oriented book. It wasn't necessarily an all-ages book, but it was definitely a young reader's book, but also appropriate for readers of most ages. It's a most ages book, and so was this one, right? So it's about these two kids. One is a spawn of Satan. One is like a little demon kid, and one is an angel kid. And in a kind of like a new gods type way, they're trying to build a truce between heaven and hell, and they swap babies, right? And they send these babies to Earth, and they have the demon kid raised by attentive and beautiful and amazing parents, and they have the angelic kid raised by dipshit, absent and ignoring parents, right? And so it's like a nurture versus nature type thing, and they wind up in the same area at the same school, and their powers start developing in their adolescence. It was a book that had a lot of charm, had a lot of heart to it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I wouldn't say that this is all ages, but I would definitely say that it's most ages. And I think Peter J. Tomasi is kind of taking some of the energy that he was infusing Super Sons into, and he's bringing it here into Ghost Machine. Now, this is not connected to the Unnamed universe. It's separate even from Rockefellers, but they're two solid, really cool books that you can share with your family. And you know what? do yourself a favor, pull a John's Comics with Kids and read comics with your kids. I ain't got kids. I got cats. I try to read comics with them. They look at me like, are you going to feed me anytime soon? Read comics with your kids. Because John told me this one time, Brother John, from John's Comics with Kids. He told me one time, because I asked him, how do you get kids to read? He goes, kids model their parents. When parents read comics and show their kids that they read comics, and even encourage those kids to read comics along with them, you get a lifelong fan hooked. That's honestly how I became a fan. My stepdad sent me comics, encouraged me to read them, would look at them with me. That's how I got into comics. These are books that are perfect for that. If you got kids, read Hornsby and Halo. See what you think about it. Maybe share it with them. You might get a new generation of fandom to keep this industry alive a little bit longer. Then we got Universal Monsters Frankenstein issue number 4 from Michael Walsh. Toni Marie Griffin on the coloring. Can we just highlight that again? All right, this is a great, satisfying conclusion to the Frankenstein story that did what the Martin Simmons and the James Tynion Dracula book did, which was tell a story within the story of the Universal movie, right? Creature from the Black Lagoon goes in a different direction, gives us kind of like a sequel set way later. Didn't really work, but Dracula worked, and this worked too. This one does feel a little bit more by the numbers, because now that we're at the end of the story, we kind of have to make it fit in with the end of the story. But the actual story that this book is telling about this kid who his father has died, and his hand has become the hand of Frankenstein, and each issue is centered around a different body part affixed to this Frankenstein monster, and the themes are there, and the nuance is there, and Michael Walsh's artwork is freaking phenomenal. If you're a fan of the Frankenstein movie by James Whale, you need to read this book. There should be a really beautiful hardcover collection coming soon. I got to get all these Skybound Universal books in hardcover, because they're just that good. All right, from Ghost Machine, we have Hyde Street, issue number 2, Jeff Johns, Ivan Reis, Danny Mickey. This was really solid. I thought it was better than issue number 1. Issue number 1 set us up with this X-ray vision guy and this like Boy Scout kid. The issue number 2 is the Boy Scout kid's kind of like story, right? So it's a little bit about where he came from, who he is, why he's on Hyde Street. It's deepening the mystery of Hyde Street, but at the same time, it's giving us a really solid kind of like one and done story, but at the same time is building on a narrative that's being built over these 2 issues. Hyde Street's pretty freaking cool, and the artwork by Ivan Reis, top notch. Seriously, Jeff Johns knows what he's doing. He knows how to publish comics. He is getting these artists that DC cannot keep on a book for more than 2 or 3 issues, aside from Brian Hitch, and he's making it work. He's making it work because he knows how to do comics. He knows publication. He knows the scheduling, and we are getting some really solid work from Ivan Reis in the issues, or in the pages of Hyde Street issue number 2. All right. By the way, I forgot to mention this. The smell of the week is, in fact, Hornsby and Halo. It smells like angelic sweetness, and it smells like demonic fury, all at the same time. Plus paper. Plus it smells like paper. All right, then we got Feral, issue number 8 from Tony Fleece, Tone Rodriguez, and Trish Forstner. I love this book. It's a zombie story told through the eyes of cats. And in this issue, we're establishing this, the fact that there is the part of the pack, they think they're safe now, but they're actually being kept by some kind of like crazy cat lady, and it's not a safe environment for them to be in. There's some truly horrific moments in here. It's very unclean. It's very like just nasty. If you ever watch like cat hoarders and shit like that online, it's sad. It's sad. I'm a cat person. I love my cats. Cats in this kind of situation makes me sad. Tony is always pulling at my heartstrings in the issues of Feral. This is no exception. And I'm going to give the cover of the week to the variant cover by Trish Forstner and Tony Fleece, which is an homage to the Dario Argento film, Phenomena. Did you not think I'd catch on that, Tony? I did, and we're best friends still. That's the cover of the week right there. All right, then we got Grommets issue number 6. The penultimate issue of Grommets, I love this book. It's like stoner skateboarding kids in the 80s, slice of life, coming of age type tale. This book could have just maintained in a nostalgia, silly, goofy kind of vibe. But it actually has gone very deep, has gotten very tragic, brutally violent at times, and I'm all for it. This is an awesome book. Like, it really elevates itself beyond what other books would just do. Other books would just be like, oh, they're stoners, they like Nintendo, they eat Taco Bell, they like this skateboard. That's the book. Maybe one of them will fall in love and get the chick and she'll go to the dance with them. No, this one deals with bullying in a very real and brutal sense. And hats off 100% to Brian Posehn and Rick Remender for doing it that way. Brett Parson, by the way, the art is amazing. Expressive, comedic, but even is handling some of these more violent moments incredibly freaking well. Grommets is one of the best books of the year. It really is. Then we got Void Rivals, issue number 14. Hot Rod shows up, y'all. It's been teased since Free Comic Book Day, so I'm not spoiling much of anything. This is, I wouldn't say it's a weaker issue of Void Rivals, but it felt like a weaker issue of Void Rivals because we're in the beginning of a new story. We're kind of kicking off some things, and we're taking our time because we got our characters in different points, right? So our characters are in different spots. There's a lot of like world building still going on in the pages of Void Rivals. And I do love, excuse me, I do love that this book's identity is not solely based on being connected to this Energon universe, but I love when they really dive into it, like Springer's involvement, Jetfire, of course, from the first issue. Now Hot Rod, really cool stuff. If you've been enjoying Void Rivals, no reason not to enjoy this one, but it felt more like a step between issue, if that makes sense. Then we got the Tin Can Society, issue number 3 of 9. Peter Warren, Francesco Mobili, and Chris Chuckery. This is a great book. So this is about an Iron Man type character who grew up with a cabal of friends. They're now grown up. He's a superhero, basically Iron Man. He dies. Now all the friends are coming back together after years apart to try to solve his murder, and one of them may be the killer, right? It gives me Iron Man meets It vibes, and I'm all about it. In the issue number 3, we get the backstory of the Tin Man himself and his lover, and we get that story explored, and we see more of the booming and heating up conflicts of the group that's trying to figure out this mystery, right? But we also get the development of a relationship as told through hindsight, and it's pretty freaking saucy when it needs to be. Then we got Savage Dragon 273. Eric Larson is killing it still with Savage Dragon. It's got a giant, energetic, dynamic Kirby influence all throughout. It's not quite as refined as Savage Dragon used to be back in the early days, but it is wild, it is bonkers, and Eric Larson is giving no fucks whatsoever with this book, and I am all here for it. It is insane, it is wild, it is fun, it is irreverent, it is crude, it is bold, it is exciting, it is daring, it is preposterous, it is ridiculous, and it is fucking awesome. Savage Dragon. All right, then we got Spawn here with 359, and this was kind of a weaker issue of Spawn. Didn't really do much for me. Brett Booth's artwork was still solid. We're introducing more new, I don't know, alliances with Spawn, Al, and this new, like, former Angel chick, and they're trying to team up to end the vampire reign. It's all right. It was kind of all over the place, and every so often you get one of those issues of Spawn where you're just like, what the hell just happened? That was one of those. All right, from Dark Horse, we have Welcome to Maynard, issue number 1. This is a new one from James Robinson, excuse me, and Jay Bone. Jay Bone is a super cool artist, very animated, Bruce Timm, Michael Avon Oeming type style, and it works for the flow of the book. This is a book about a woman who has accepted a new job in this town, and in this town there is a magical hotel named Maynard, and she is now going to be a bellhop in that magical hotel that most people can't see. So it's like introducing the world, introducing the characters. It was fun. It had a nice like light and vibrant touch to it. I thought it was a pretty solid first issue, and I'm excited to see how it develops. From the world of Hellboy, we have The Serpent in the Garden, Ed Gray and the Last Battle for England, issue number 1 of 3. I almost didn't read this because as much as I am a fan of Mike Mignola, as much as I am a fan of the Hellboy universe, I've never really read all of the Witchfinder stuff, and that's the Ed Gray stuff, right? But as I was passing up on this, I saw that Ben Stenbeck was the artist. If Ben's doing the art, it's a Hellboy book, it's a Mike Mignola book to pay attention to. They just got to get this dude on a consistent book. They did it with Baltimore, and they're trying to do it with the Hellboy universe, but they keep putting him on miniseries to miniseries. Like, Mike, I love your work. Pick a narrative, stick with it, let Ben be your artist. This shit is awesome. This was a great issue. Even if you haven't read any of the shit that came before in the Ed Gray story, it doesn't matter. If you're a Hellboy fan, read this, right? There's a lot of callbacks to old school Hellboy stories. Really interesting stuff. It's picking up from old school stuff, from Hellboy and Hell stuff, and it's building its own thing. And it's really good. And Ben Stenbeck, I think he might be the best artist on the Mike Mignola book outside of Mike Mignola. I know we got Richard Corbin. I know we got Duncan Fegredo. We got so many other great artists, but Ben Stenbeck knows how to work with Mike Mignola so well. This is a great example why. The Carlisle School for Kings, issue number 2. I really liked issue number 1. Think of Harry Potter mixed with Game of Thrones just a little bit, right? But how do we find out who the next king is going to be? Well, every school term, we send a bunch of kids to a school like a Hogwarts, and they have to live there for a year and survive, and the winner becomes the new king of the United Kingdoms. But there's a lot of stuff going on in between. This one did not hit me as much as issue number 1, but it did develop that story, that concept, and those characters out a little bit more, but it did kind of feel a little bit clunky in parts, so not as fluid as part 1, a little bit more stiff, but we'll see what's going on. Then we got The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos, issue number 13. I'm so glad this book exists. I'm so glad it's continuing on doing what it's doing, which is building great characters, having great artwork, great solid coloring, really great action sequences, taking classic horror motifs and tropes and spinning them on their heads and doing so in an exciting fashion. If you are a fan of horror, and classic horror in particular, if you like the Universal stuff, for instance, read Christopher Chaos. You owe it to yourself to do so. Then we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue number 4. Jason Aaron, his 4th issue of Ninja Turtles. The first 4 issues have spotlighted an individual turtle to let us know where they were. Raphael was in prison. Michelangelo's a movie star. Leonardo is doing Leonardo things. Donatello has been kidnapped, as we saw in the Free Comic Book Day issue, by a outlaw mutant fighting rink. Right? And so that's what's going on here. It's the journey of him escaping his noble intentions of being there and reuniting him with the brothers to set up where we're going to go. This has been an interesting way to start a Turtles relaunch. Jason Aaron's been doing a good job. I love this issue. Chris Burnham's artwork, by the way, is amazing. Chris Burnham should be the ongoing artist on a Turtles book. He's got that Eastman and Laird flavor. I love Chris Burnham's artwork. So the artwork here is my favorite of the series so far. But it's interesting to do such a slow burn to start up a new relaunch. You, out there, let's say that you haven't been reading Turtles. Let's say you're jumping into this new relaunch. Are you bored yet? Are you still engaged? Let me know in the comments down below. I thought it was a great issue, but now I'm really excited to see the actual Turtles book come to fruition. All right, from Mad Cave, we got a new one called Synap. This one was a little bit weak. I didn't really like this one that much. It's about this like mech, this giant robot that comes in parts. Think like a more complex Voltron, and there's got to be a pilot for each different part. They're trying to rebuild this mech that was lost. They're trying to find their parts while also training the new pilots. It was kind of all over the place. It kind of was a little bit disjointed in its pace, and I never really fully engaged with it, and it never really developed too much for me. So I didn't really like that one. All right, that's what I read new this week. Diamond is being screwy again, and a lot of Dynamite, Boom, Mad Cave, Magma, a lot of books just maybe are going to come a week later. I don't know. But here's some books from last week that I finally got to read. Flash Gordon, issue number 4 from Mad Cave. Jeremy Adams continues to deliver a really great Flash Gordon story. I've never considered myself a huge Flash Gordon fan. The only history I have with this character is the movie. And I love this book. And this was another super exciting issue. Then Sync number 11 is here. Brett, I've been seeing your comments. We just got our copies in of Sync number 11. So we didn't get 12 yet, and 13 just hit FOC, so we'll freaking see. But Sync number 11 was amazing, and if I would have had this the week of release, it would have got the smell of the week, and it might have made the pick of the week. This was super freaking cool. If you've never read Sync, get a hold of the graphic novels. Jump in now. Each issue is pretty much its own thing, so you could just find Sync number 11 or 12, hopefully, and check them out. Then we got Thundercats issue number 10 from Dynamite. A great issue of Thundercats. It focuses in on Slythe. These last few issues have really focused in on one character before we go into issue number 11, which is going to be the big Mumra versus Lion-O, at least round 1. But the art here is done by guest artist Joe Mulvey. And Joe Mulvey is born to draw Thundercats. I love Drew Moss. Drew, you're my boy. I love what you're doing here. But we need some more Joe on this book as well. It is absolutely stunning. Then we got Powerpuff Girls issue number 5. A Mojo Jojo goes to the moon to get away from the Powerpuff Girls story. But it doesn't quite end up where we thought it was. And we also get Dynamo back again. We haven't seen Dynamo in a while. So there you go. So to recap. Came out last week, technically, but you might just be seeing them at your shops for the first time this week. Powerpuff Girls number 5 continues to do what Powerpuff Girls should do. Thundercats number 10, more Joe Mulvey on Thundercats, please. Sync number 11. This book's like a month and a half late for me, but I really am glad that I have it finally. Flash Gordon number 4 is still freaking awesome. Synap did not work for me so much. TMNT, what do you think about it? Are you losing interest? Did they wait too long to really get going? But the art, the story was dope. Christopher Chaos, the best book you've never read. Definitely check that one out. Carlisle School for Kings, step down from issue number 1. We'll see what happens in 3. Serpent in the Garden. Mike Mignola, Ben Stenbeck doing what they do best. Welcome to Maynard has a lot of potential. I'm excited to see how it develops. We'll see. Spawn, this was a weak issue of Spawn. Savage Dragon, though, this book was just crazy as hell. The Tin Can Society, Sword again. Void Rivals, felt like an in-between issue, but it was alright still. Grommets is one of the best books of the year. Fight me, bruh. Feral gets the cover of the week and a really solid entry yet again into the Feral universe. Universal Monsters, Frankenstein, a great satisfying conclusion. A little bit by the numbers, but it hits all those emotional beats at the same time. Hyde Street was really good, improving on issue number 1. Hornsby and Halo issue number 1 gets the smell of the week. And a really great solid book that you should read and then decide if you want to read along with your kids with it. Blade number 2. Blade, you're doing, or Marvel, you're doing Blade wrong. Let Brian cook. Like you're letting him cook on Black Panther. Ultimate Black Panther. Pretty solid book. Mystique number 2 was better than issue number 1. Uncanny X-Men. Lackluster a little bit in the art department, but pretty solid still in the developing story. Iron Man sucked. Amazing Spider-Man was not as good as the first issue of this 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, but it was still intriguing enough. West Coast Avengers didn't do it for me, but believe it or not, Iron Man was worse. Iron Man sucked. All right, Batman, Long Halloween, Last Halloween, really freaking good. Green Arrow, really solid, great jumping on point. Nightwing, Dan Waters is feeling himself in Bloodhaven right now, and I'm all here for it. Action Comics, should it be weekly? You let me know. Story's still pretty good. Superman, this is one of the best issues yet. DC, do not let this team go. Do not let this team go, DC. It's that important. Detective Comics, some of the best artwork I've ever seen from Mikkel Hanin. Batman, Santa Claus, Silent Night Returns. If you like the first one, you're going to like that one. Because I did. Black Canary, Best of the Best. Big disappointment for me. Justice League Unlimited, the Justice League book we deserved. Dan Mora, Mark Waid. Don't let Dan Mora off of this book. Absolute Wonder Woman, Noir edition of issue number 1. If you want to see some really nice art. But the freaking best comic for me, the pick of the week. Absolute Wonder Woman, issue number 2, building on the momentum established in issue number 1. That's what I read, that's what I thought, that's what I'm digging. What are you reading, what are you thinking, what are you digging? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and join us over at patreon.com/PCP if you want to help support the channel. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading. Station. Pop, pop.